My boyfriend had a wedding with his first love, so I reconciled with my first love. Chapter 1, The Wedding That Wasn't Mine. The sun hung high in the sky, casting its golden glow over the pristine white walls of the chapel. The sound of hushed whispers, quiet sobs, and soft piano melodies filled the air. I wasn't meant to be here. I shouldn't have been here. Yet, my feet remained rooted to the ground as I watched the man I had loved for 3 years stand at the altar, not with me, but with her. His first love. The girl he had never truly let go of. A delicate lace veil covered her hair, her pale hands trembling as she clutched his. In her wheelchair, she looked fragile, like a glass doll that could shatter at any moment. The moment she raised her gaze to him, her eyes shimmered with emotion, with love. And he returned that gaze without hesitation. A lump formed in my throat as I clenched my fists. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. Just last night, he had held me in his arms. Just last night, he had whispered sweet promises against my skin. Just last night, I had believed I was the only one in his heart. But today, in front of all these people, he was making a vow to another woman. The moment the officiant pronounced them married, the crowd erupted into applause. I remained silent, frozen in place as my heart shattered into pieces. I didn't even realize I was crying until I felt a strong, familiar presence beside me. Pathetic. A deep, mocking voice sent a shiver down my spine. I turned my head slightly, and there he was, Daniel Carter. My ex-boyfriend. The man I had left behind years ago when I had chosen Ethan instead. Tall, striking, with sharp, dark eyes that never missed a thing, he looked at me with an unreadable expression, his lips curved into a smirk. "I thought you'd be doing so much better after leaving me," he murmured, his gaze flickering to the stage where Ethan and his new bride were receiving congratulations. "But here you are, watching your boyfriend marry someone else. Doesn't feel great, does it?" I swallowed, trying to push down the suffocating weight in my chest. "Daniel, why are you here?" He slipped his hands into his pockets, leaning in slightly. "Would you believe me if I said I came to see your reaction?" My breath hitched. Because it made perfect sense. Daniel had always been like this. Ruthless. Cruel in a way that made it impossible to ignore him. He was the type of man who never forgave, who never let go of a grudge. And I had left him, believing that Ethan was the better choice. But looking at him now, standing beside me while Ethan stood at the altar with someone else, I couldn't help but wonder, had I made a mistake? I turned back to the stage just as Ethan bent down, pressing a tender kiss to his new wife's forehead. That was the moment something inside me snapped. I had given him everything. My love, my time, my devotion. And in return, he had thrown me away like I was nothing. Fine. If that was how little he thought of me, then I would stop thinking of him altogether. I wiped my tears away and forced a cold smile. Daniel noticed the shift immediately. "Oh." He raised an eyebrow. "What's this?" I turned to him, my voice unwavering. "You're right. This is pathetic." I exhaled slowly, feeling my chest lighten for the first time that day. I shouldn't be standing here crying over a man who was never mine to begin with. Daniel watched me carefully, his amusement fading into something more thoughtful. Then, before he could say anything else, I straightened my shoulders, took one last look at the man who had betrayed me, and walked away. Because from this moment on, I refused to be the fool who waited. Chapter 2, Cutting Ties. Francesca sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her phone screen. The wedding was over. The man she had spent years loving had walked away without a second thought, and she was done waiting for an explanation. Her fingers hovered over Ethan's contact, her heart aching at the familiar name. Block number? The pop-up notification stared back at her, almost tauntingly. She took a deep breath. She had spent too long waiting, too long hoping. No more. With one final press of her finger, she severed the connection. Her phone buzzed immediately. Ethan, where are you? Let's talk. Francesca stared at the message, her chest tightening. If this had been before she saw him at the altar, before she realized how easily he had cast her aside, she would have dropped everything to run to him. But not this time. She deleted the message, then blocked him everywhere, phone, social media, even his email. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't vengeful. It was simply necessary. Next came her things. One by one, she tossed everything that reminded her of him into a box. The sweater he had left at her place, the notes they had exchanged, the silly trinkets they had collected from their dates. By the time she was done, the apartment felt lighter. Empty, yet strangely freeing. A knock on the door startled her. Francesca's heart clenched for a brief moment. Had Ethan come looking for her? Would he stand in the rain, beg for her forgiveness? She shook the thought away. No. That's not who he was. She opened the door, and found Daniel leaning casually against the frame. Dressed in his usual sleek black attire, hands in his pockets, he looked completely at ease. You actually did it, he mused, glancing at the packed boxes behind her. Didn't think you had it in you. Francesca narrowed her eyes. And what's that supposed to mean? Daniel smirked. I mean, you were always the type to hold on. To beg. To cling. He tilted his head slightly, studying her. But here you are. Letting go. She folded her arms across her chest. Did you just come here to gloat? He chuckled, stepping inside uninvited. Maybe. He picked up a framed picture of her and Ethan, flipping it over in his hands before setting it down. But mostly, I came to offer you something. Francesca frowned. A pity speech? Daniel shook his head. No. A proposition. She hesitated. What kind of proposition? His smirk widened. You'll find out. But first, he walked over to her kitchen and grabbed a bottle of whiskey from her counter. Let's celebrate, shall we? Francesca stared at him, then at the box of discarded memories. She was done with Ethan. Done with waiting, done with hurting. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to see what Daniel had to say. Chapter 3, A Deal with the Devil. The whiskey burned her throat as Francesca took another sip, her fingers gripping the glass a little too tightly. Daniel sat across from her, his own drink untouched. He was watching her, not with pity, but with something else. Something that made her uneasy. You've had your fun, she said, setting the glass down with a clink. Now tell me. What do you want? Daniel leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. You. Francesca scoffed. Try again. He smirked. All right, let me rephrase. I want you to pretend to be with me. She blinked. What? You heard me. He leaned back, stretching out as if he had all the time in the world. You need a distraction, and I need a partner for an upcoming event. It's a win-win. Francesca frowned. Why would I ever agree to that? Daniel swirled his drink lazily, his gaze locking onto hers. Because, Francesca, you don't just want to move on. You want to make Ethan regret every single decision he ever made. Her breath hitched. Because damn him, he was right. She wanted Ethan to see what he had lost. She wanted him to know that he wasn't irreplaceable. And yet, Daniel, she said slowly. You don't do things out of kindness. What's in it for you? His lips curled. Oh, sweetheart. You know me so well. He leaned in, his voice dropping. I have my own reasons. But let's just say, I wouldn't mind seeing Ethan suffer either. Francesca hesitated. Everything about this screamed dangerous. Daniel wasn't the type of man you got tangled up with lightly. But then she remembered the way Ethan had held another woman at the altar. The way he had explained himself like she was nothing more than a bystander in his story. Maybe it was time for her to start a new story of her own. She met Daniel's gaze head-on. Fine. Daniel's smirk deepened. He reached out his hand. Then we have a deal. Francesca hesitated for only a moment before shaking it. And just like that, she made a deal with the devil. Chapter 4, The First Public Appearance. Francesca adjusted the delicate strap of her satin dress, her reflection in the mirror almost unfamiliar. The deep red fabric hugged her body in all the right places, elegant yet striking. Behind her, Daniel leaned casually against the doorway, a smirk playing on his lips. You clean up nicely, he mused. Almost makes me believe this little charade of ours. Francesca rolled her eyes, turning away from the mirror. Let's just get this over with. Daniel chuckled. Ah, there's that enthusiasm I love. The event they were attending was an exclusive gala, packed with the city's elite. And, most importantly, Ethan would be there. As they arrived, Francesca's hand rested lightly on Daniel's arm, their entrance commanding attention. The moment they stepped into the grand ballroom, conversations faltered, gazes lingered. And then, she felt it. A pair of eyes burning into her from across the room. Ethan. He stood near the bar, a drink clutched in his hand, his grip tightening as he took in the sight before him. His expression was unreadable, but his jaw clenched ever so slightly. Francesca ignored him. She turned to Daniel, a coy smile on her lips as she whispered something in his ear, nothing important, just enough to make it look intimate. Daniel played along effortlessly, his laughter rich and low. He placed a hand on the small of her back, guiding her further into the room. Across the room, Ethan downed his drink in one go. His gaze never left her. Chapter 5, A Game of Pretenses. Ethan had always thought he understood Francesca. She was the girl who would always wait for him, always love him, no matter what. But tonight, she was different. She wasn't looking at him with hurt or longing. She wasn't waiting for him to explain himself. She was untouchable. And she was with Daniel. Ethan knew Daniel well enough. He was ruthless, never did anything without a reason. If he was with Francesca, it wasn't just for fun. Ethan's fists clenched as he watched Francesca laugh at something Daniel said. Had she ever laughed like that with me? He didn't realize he was moving until he was right beside them. Francesca. Her smile didn't falter, but her eyes darkened slightly as she turned to face him. Ethan. His gaze flickered to Daniel. Didn't think you'd be interested in charity work, Daniel. Daniel smirked, unfazed. What can I say? Francesca has always been someone worth investing in. Ethan's jaw tightened. Is that what this is? An investment? Daniel's grip on Francesca's waist tightened subtly, a silent reassurance. Something like that. Francesca tilted her head slightly, studying Ethan. Did you need something, Ethan? Ethan hesitated. Yes. He needed answers. He needed to know when everything had changed, when she had changed. But looking at her now, he knew he had no right to ask. Nothing, he muttered, turning sharply on his heel. But the storm brewing in his chest told him this was far from over. Chapter 6, The Shift. The night continued, but Ethan barely registered anything after that moment. He watched as Francesca moved effortlessly through the crowd, her confidence undeniable. This wasn't the girl who had once followed him like a shadow. This wasn't the woman he had thought would always be waiting for him. This was someone new. And it unsettled him. Emily looped her arm through his, pouting slightly. Ethan, you're distracted. He forced a smile. Just business. She huffed. You're watching her, aren't you? Ethan didn't answer. Emily's eyes darkened. You don't get to be jealous, you know. You chose me. Did he? Or had he simply assumed Francesca would always be an option? A bitter taste filled his mouth. Meanwhile, Francesca was oblivious to his inner turmoil. Or maybe, she just didn't care anymore. Chapter 7, The Confrontation. The gala was coming to an end when Ethan finally cornered her. Francesca. She turned, arching a brow at the urgency in his voice. Something wrong? He exhaled sharply. What are you doing with him? She blinked. Excuse me? Daniel, he said, stepping closer. Is this just to spite me? Francesca laughed, actually laughed. Ethan, she said, shaking her head. Not everything revolves around you. His stomach twisted. He expected anger. Bitterness. But instead, all he saw in her eyes was indifference. And somehow, that hurt more. Chapter 8, Ethan's Unraveling. Ethan had always been confident in his decisions. He had chosen Emily. He had believed Francesca would always be there, waiting, loving, hoping. But now, as he watched her slip further and further away, an unfamiliar feeling clawed at his chest. Regret. It started as a small irritation, seeing her with Daniel, hearing about her successes, knowing she no longer spared him a glance. But as the days passed, that irritation grew into something more dangerous. It turned into an obsession. Scene 1, A Sleepless Night. Ethan lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Emily was beside him, fast asleep, but he felt miles away. His mind replayed every interaction with Francesca from the gala, the way she had smiled at Daniel, the way she had dismissed Ethan without a second thought. Had she truly moved on? He rolled over, grabbing his phone. Without thinking, he searched for her name on social media. Her latest post showed a picture of her at a cafe, her hand resting beside a cup of coffee. The caption was simple. New beginnings taste like caramel and freedom. Ethan clenched his jaw. New beginnings. Freedom. From him. He locked his phone, tossing it onto the bedside table. But sleep didn't come. Scene 2, The Confrontation with Daniel. The next afternoon, Ethan found himself outside Daniel's office. He didn't even remember driving there, but now he was here, standing in the sleek, modern lobby of the high-rise building Daniel owned. He didn't wait for an appointment. He pushed past the receptionist and strode straight into Daniel's office. Daniel looked up from his desk, completely unfazed. To what do I owe the pleasure? He asked, leaning back in his chair. Ethan didn't waste time. What are you doing with Francesca? Daniel smirked. Shouldn't you be asking yourself why you care? Ethan's jaw tightened. This isn't a joke, Daniel. No, it isn't, Daniel agreed. Because you don't get to act possessive now. You had her, Ethan. And you threw her away. Ethan took a deep breath, forcing himself to stay calm. Are you serious about her? Daniel's smirk faded. What if I am? Something sharp twisted in Ethan's gut. For the first time, the reality of losing Francesca truly hit him. Daniel wasn't just playing games. And Francesca wasn't coming back. Scene 3, a failing relationship. Ethan returned home that night, exhausted. But instead of finding comfort, he walked into an argument. Emily stood in the living room, arms crossed. You're distracted, she accused. Ever since the gala, you've been acting weird. Ethan sighed. Emily, I've had a lot on my mind. She stepped closer, eyes sharp. If I didn't know better, I'd say you're thinking about her. He froze. Emily let out a bitter laugh. Wow. You can't even deny it, can you? Emily, don't. No, she interrupted. I see it, Ethan. The way you look at her. The way you don't look at me. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. This isn't about Francesca. Emily scoffed. Liar. And for the first time, Ethan had nothing to say. Because she was right. Scene 4, a moment of weakness. A week later, Ethan found himself in front of Francesca's apartment. He didn't know what he was expecting. Maybe an argument. Maybe a chance to explain himself. But when the door opened, he was met with something he wasn't prepared for. Francesca looked at him with mild surprise, then, nothing. No anger. No sadness. Just indifference. Ethan, she asked. What are you doing here? He swallowed hard. Can we talk? She hesitated. Ethan, there's nothing left to say. He searched her face, looking for even the smallest trace of the woman who used to love him. But she wasn't there. And that's when he finally understood. He had lost her. For good. Chapter 9, Francesca's final goodbye. Francesca had spent too long living in the shadows of someone else's love story. Not anymore. She stood in front of Ethan, her expression calm but firm. His unexpected appearance at her apartment was a last, desperate attempt. She could see it in his eyes, the regret, the longing, the silent plea. But it was too late. Francesca, his voice was hoarse, as if he had spent days battling with himself before coming here. She exhaled slowly. Ethan, what do you want? He flinched at the coldness in her tone. Once, she would have given him everything without hesitation. But that version of her no longer existed. I made a mistake, he admitted. Francesca's heart didn't skip a beat. It didn't ache or break. Instead, she felt nothing. You did, she agreed. His eyes darkened. I miss you. She sighed, shaking her head. You don't miss me, Ethan. You missed the version of me that worshipped you. The one who would have done anything for you. But she's gone. His hands clenched into fists at his sides. Stop. Her voice was gentle but firm. This conversation should have happened a long time ago. But it doesn't matter anymore. A flicker of desperation crossed his face. Francesca, please. She smiled sadly. Goodbye, Ethan. Then she closed the door, shutting him, and that chapter of her life, out forever. Chapter 10, A Fresh Start. Francesca sat at a rooftop cafe, the evening breeze cool against her skin. Across from her, Daniel stirred his coffee, watching her with quiet amusement. You look lighter, he commented. She tilted her head. Lighter? He nodded. Like someone who finally let go of something heavy. She thought about it for a moment before smiling. I did. Daniel smirked. Good. Now I don't have to see that idiot lurking around anymore. She chuckled. Jealous? He leaned closer, his voice teasing but serious. I don't share, Francesca. Her heart skipped a beat, not in panic, not in fear of losing herself, but in the warmth of something new, something real. Maybe love wasn't about chasing. Maybe it was about being chosen. Chapter 11, Ethan's Realization. Ethan sat in his empty apartment, staring at his phone. There were no messages from Francesca. No calls. She had really moved on. Emily had left, too. Their relationship had fallen apart after Francesca walked away. Maybe it had always been doomed. He ran a hand over his face, exhaling slowly. He had been so sure Francesca would always be there, waiting. But she wasn't. And now, he was alone. Chapter 12, Building a New Life. Months passed. Francesca threw herself into her career, her friendships, her happiness. She no longer second-guessed herself, no longer waited for someone else's approval. And through it all, Daniel remained by her side. One evening, as they walked along the pier, he suddenly stopped, turning to her with an intensity that made her heart race. Francesca, he said. Come with me to Paris. She blinked. Paris? He grinned. For work. But also, because I want to experience life with you. A year ago, she would have hesitated. She would have been afraid. But not anymore. She smiled. Let's go. Chapter 13, A Love That Chooses Her. Paris was everything she had imagined, breathtaking, full of possibility. One evening, as she stood on the balcony of their apartment, Daniel wrapped his arms around her from behind. You happy? He murmured. She turned to look at him. More than I ever thought I could be. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. Good. Because I plan to keep it that way. She leaned into him, realizing something. She had spent so much of her life chasing love. But real love? Real love chose her. And this time, she chose it back. Chapter 14, A Wedding Unlike the First. Francesca never thought she would get married. Not after everything. But here she was, standing at the edge of a sunlit vineyard, wearing a simple yet elegant dress, looking at the man who had loved her without conditions. Daniel. As they exchanged vows, she felt no fear, no doubt. Only certainty. When he kissed her, the past melted away. This was her real love story. Chapter 15, The End and the Beginning. Years later, Francesca sat on a park bench, watching children play. A small girl with Daniel's mischievous smile ran toward her, laughing. Mommy, look! Francesca scooped her up, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Daniel sat beside her, wrapping an arm around her. Perfect day, isn't it? She smiled. It really is. No more waiting. No more chasing. She had finally found her happiness. And this time, it was forever. The end.